We got some great news on Tuesday because Chargers All-Pro left tackle Rashawn Slater was at mandatory minicamp, meaning that an extension for the star left tackle should be coming very soon.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons together, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, it is a great sighting to see the amazing Rashawn Slater back in the building. I think we can all take a collective sigh of relief knowing that he is there and is not contentious, and we can expect a deal hopefully to get done in the very near future. And Derwin James flying around in practice, making it look like he is going to have an all-pro season in year 2 in the Jesse Minter system. And Coach Harbaugh unveils his elite 9 players, the most physically fit players on the team.
Yeah, and there's definitely a surprise name. Of course, Zion Johnson made it on the list, as it has to be, because we know how much they love him. But also, JK Dobbins officially signing with the division rival Broncos. So we'll talk about that, and a random Willie Snead tryout, which I didn't see coming. But the big news of the day, obviously, is Rashawn Slater having not signed his extension yet, but at least being at the mandatory minicamp part of the offseason. This was always the kind of date that made it feel to us like, okay, well, if he's not at this and he's deciding to take potentially massive, $15,000 plus fines per day, maybe we should be concerned that a deal is not going to get done. But according to Jim Harbaugh, when he was at his press conference before the Chargers practice today, he had said that he, expected Rashawn Slater to be at practice, which he was later on in the day, already had gone through walkthroughs. Also said he did the conditioning test, which he said, to quote him, was too easy, which, man, you must, I don't want to say you have a death wish, but you must be really asking for it if you're going to say that Ben Herbert's conditioning test is too easy. That just seems like you would be bringing back some really nasty consequences. But David, this is something that has been one of the big stories of the offseason, someone who obviously should be re-signed as a true stalwart player and your franchise blindside protector. It is good to see this. A deal isn't done yet, which we didn't necessarily think it would be by now, but things aren't so bad that he's willing to make the statement and take the fines he would have had he not been there today.
Yeah, this is great news. I think, like I said, it should allow everyone to relax a little bit because, Justin Herbert is the most important player on the team, but Rashawn Slater protects the most important player on the team.
He's up there,
and
too.
He's up there, too. I mean, I think he's probably, in the top 5 of most important players that the Chargers have on the roster, and he is that good. I mean, he was incredible last year when he was healthy. I mean, just purely one of the best left tackles in football, and I think he's showcased when he's healthy and he's on the field, he's one of the best left tackles in the game, and he deserves to be paid as such. And I do feel very confident that it will get done. It's still a matter of when and not if, but I think we all just want it to get done. But we also have to keep in mind, this is probably going to be $100+ million as far as the contract is concerned here, pretty easily. So anytime we're talking about money of this magnitude, there's going to be a lot of details that have to get ironed out and that have to get figured out. I still am very confident that it's going to get done. I just am like all of you. I want it to be done already so we can just focus on the rest of the season.
I think what this tells me is just that it's not something that is too broken to be fixed. Like you look at a Trey Hendrickson situation, right? It doesn't have the same kind of feeling.
Or their first round pick, same thing.
Yeah, oh God, I know. That's another thing too, because at least it's not getting to the point where these guys are having to, sit out of these practices. And as far as Rashawn Slater goes, if Slater isn't out there right now, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it'll be interesting to see if he's out there during training camp, because if it goes into that, that'll be kind of another concerning thing where you could see kind of a hold-in situation like with Derwin James, where it's like, I'm going to be there, I'm going to report, I'm not going to get fined, but also I'm not going to put my body through the physical parts of training camp that could lead me to potentially losing money in this contract we're trying to nail down. So I think that is the really most important part of things here. But we did hear from Jim Harbaugh, and he did kind of give at least an update on the center guard controversy, I guess you could say, or just kind of what the plan is going to be there. And I thought it was really interesting hearing him say that he wants the center battle decided 8 to 10 days during or into training camp. This is a quote from Daniel Popper. Historically, that's when I usually like to start setting those starting lineups. From now until then, the competition will continue. So I think it still kind of feels like a two-man race for that center position, David. But I think that is kind of how it should be. I mean, this is a position that can't be decided until you have the pads on.
Yeah, absolutely not. We're talking about the physicality of the offensive line, and you have to put the pads on to be able to figure out if that's the right combination of guys that need to be out there. And we know right now, just based off of the lineups and how things have been set up, that it is Bradley Bozeman, Zion Johnson, and it seems like Zion Johnson's getting the lion's share of the opportunities to be that starting center. I know they all want him to be. I think they're trying to give him every chance for it to be that, but I do feel like it is going to be a true competition. And it seems to me like whoever's not going to be the starting center is going to be defaulted to be the starting left guard. So it seems like it's just going to be one of those two guys. We'll see if somebody else is going to be able to throw their hat in that race. Maybe somebody unexpected might show up in that race. Who knows? But it seems like right now, those are the two clear and obvious front runners.
And it just feels like the left guard spot, maybe there's someone that can get in there, but like it just feels at this point, at least for Andre James specifically, that he's very clearly, down on the totem pole, and that it feels like they want Zion to win it. So the first team offense out there today, now that Rashawn Slater is actually at practice, was Slater at left tackle, Bradley Bozeman at left guard, Zion Johnson at center, and then the guys we know, Mekhi Becton and Joe All on the right side. So that is what it is right now. Hope that Andre James can enter the conversation or at least put his best foot forward. But he was the second team center on Tuesday and the third string left guard. Popper did also mention that Jamari Sawyer, Trey Pipkins weren't out there, so that might have affected things a little bit, at least as far as the second and third teams. But there is kind of a wild card in this situation, David, because right now it still feels kind of bleak. Like I hope that both of these guys can play positions, in Zion Johnson's case, he's never played before, and in Bradley Bozeman's position, a spot that he hasn't played since he was with Greg Roman in his first couple of seasons, that it all works out. But like, I still think there's something to like not having a potential upgrade between those two spots and just expecting two guys to trade, spots and have a huge improvement there. And that is Branson Taylor, which brings me back to something we talked about earlier in the week with Greg Roman appearing on the Chargers Weekly podcast and talking about Branson Taylor specifically and why they liked him. And he also said that he will have every chance to play left guard or basically to win that starting left guard spot, which was interesting to hear him say that, especially because this is a dude who hasn't played tackle or played guard at the collegiate level. We've seen them try to do this before, but I think it is kind of at least a little glimmer of hope that maybe even if he doesn't win the starting left guard position, maybe it goes to Bradley Bozeman if Zion Johnson starts at center, which is kind of the main thing here, that, hey, do you have a contingency plan if you can get this dude up to speed?
Yeah, I think with Branson Taylor, this is a wild card. I mean, it's a guy they obviously truly believe in the traits and what he can bring to the table. And obviously it's a big transition, having to change from tackle to guard at the NFL level, but they clearly like the physical makeup. And, we know that one of the things that's a prerequisite for the Chargers on their offensive line is you got to be big, you got to be mean, and you got to be physical. So he obviously has to embody those type of traits. And we'll see if he can, be able to grab a spot. I still think it's probably a little bit far-fetched at this point, but we'll see. I mean, it seems like the offense coordinator is going to give him a shot.
Yeah, and I did hear Matt Money Smith and Chris Hayre also talking about how kind of in the building they believe that if this is someone that played guard or just stayed healthy, maybe this is a day 2 kind of pick that they were able to pick up in round 6. So I'm hopeful the Joe Ortiz regime, at least in Baltimore, was able to kind of find some guards and interior guys later on in the draft. They didn't usually spend premium resources when they were there, and they were able to hit on a couple of them. Now, it still feels like a position that was under appreciated as far as what the needs were for this front office and where their priorities were at going into the offseason. I still wish there was more there. Mekhi Becton is nice, obviously. but there's still some concern there for me. I think you just have to hope that Zion Johnson does pick this up quickly and he ends up being that guy that can be the center for you and give you a huge improvement at that position. But we still have more to get into, including Derwin James absolutely lighting things up at OTAs and really talking about how much better he could be now that he's in year 2 of Jesse Minter's system. We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and it's now the finals, and you know that every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. With FanDuel, it makes it super easy to stay in on the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big, like this same-game parlay for the finals game tonight. You could do SGA to score 30+, Chet Holmgren to score 15+, and Jalen Williams and Tyrese Halliburton to each make 2 or more threes and get that at plus 438. But you know me, and you know I'm riding with the Ice Cats at home Thursday night. You can still get them even after blowing out the Oilers on Monday at plus 164 to take the Panthers minus 1.5 goals on Thursday night. I think they're under the Oilers' skin. Might not travel game to game, but man, I think we saw who the better team was, and I love that. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, David, well, we still have some more OTA, or I guess minicamp now, notes to get into, and thank you to, Eric Smith, even Chris Rim putting some notes out today, and of course, Daniel Popper, who always puts out great extensive notes when he gets to be out there. And we're hoping that he'll be back out there tomorrow so we can get potentially some thoughts from Justin Herbert for the first time since that playoff game, that playoff disaster. But let's start with what happened on Tuesday. And that was Daniel Popper and also Eric Smith both kind of singling out how well that Derwin James played at OTAs, which I thought was really cool to see. David, even the fact that he's able to make as many plays as he did at OTAs on Tuesday, given the fact that they're going slower tempo and it really favors the offense and really kind of hinders the defensive backs, maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but good to see that Derwin James is kind of picking up where he left off.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Derwin James said it best himself. He said, I feel like this year 2, honing in on it, it'll be a lot more fun for me. Be free and play fast. And it seems like that's exactly what he was doing. And I think in year 1, Jesse Minter, like, whoever the other defensive coaches were trying to figure out exactly what Derwin James was capable of and seeing it up front and up close and personal. Now there's no surprise. You know exactly what Derwin James can do. You know where he's utilized best. And I think he knows it, and he knows what role he's going to be in immediately this year, which is going to allow him to really just relax, go out there, not think, and have fun, and let his physical gifts take over because he already knows exactly what his role is. We already know how much of an alpha he is. We know that he knows the defense and what he needs to do. And I think this year, in year 2 of this system, we're going to be able to see the best version of Derwin James.
That's what you hope to see. And I mean, that's saying something for someone who's already been, a second team All-Pro 3 times now in his career, for a guy who hasn't really, especially with the injuries, played a ton of seasons. But just specifically, this is why you subscribe to The Athletic. This is from Daniel Popper, a detailed version of what happened today. He said on the first pass breakup, James was one-on-one with receiver Willie Snead, and that might be kind of out of left field. We'll talk about that later on the show. Who was at Tuesday's practice as a veteran tryout. Snead ran a slant. James was glued to him, jumped the route, and deflected the pass in the air. Perriman picked it off. On the next snap, James was in man coverage on tight end Tyler Conklin. Conklin ran a shallow comeback route. James jumped that route and broke it up too. Man, I mean, like I said, at this tempo to be making those kind of plays and be able to make these kind of splash plays, and Denzel Perriman always kind of being around the ball. But it was interesting hearing what the practice was like, basically a modified 7-on-7 version, according to Daniel Popper, where it was the tight ends, running backs, and slot receivers going up against the safeties, linebackers, and slot corners. So good to see those guys, and Derwin James specifically standing out. Popper also said he broke up a screen pass later on a DJ Uyunglele, the Chargers' new, 4th string quarterback. I just wanted to say the name to show that I could. But yeah, picking up where he left off, kind of just strapping up and receiving options every time he gets a chance to. But to your point about going into year 2 of Jesse Minter's system, maybe something we haven't talked about enough. He said, I feel like this year 2, honing in on it, it'll be a lot more fun for me. Be free, play fast. Going to what you were saying there. And I think it's a really great point because I think we're kind of wooed by just how good he was, especially towards the end of the season, that it's easy to forget that was his first year with Jesse Minter and that he could even be better in 2025. Last season, he played 385 snaps in the slot, more than any other single position that he played. But more than that, he had never played more than 225 slot snaps in a season going into that. So this was a huge difference, and it paid off in a huge way, not only in an all-pro selection, but he also led all safeties with 5.5 sacks last year as well, which was his career high and the most in the NFL last year. Also an elite run defender, right? Being close to the line of scrimmage, being in the slot, being where he can make the most plays. He had 9.5 stuffs per ESPN last year, which is tackles against the run for no gain or negative yards. His previous high was 6. He cleared it by 3.5. So thinking about that dude being in the same position, hopefully being fully healthy, which he's been, right? Just has looked like in prime form.
Yeah.
Man, that's really exciting. But one of the other things we got to see at practice was the real first defensive back groupings all being out there at the same time. And what that looked like, and I was pretty surprised, David, that when Daniel Popper laid it out, it was not Cam Hart that was out there with the starting unit. It was Tarheeb Still and Dante Jackson who were the starting outside corners when Derwin James was in the slot.
Yeah, that was very, very interesting. I mean, obviously, I think we should have expected it a little bit with Dante Jackson with the kind of money that he signed, that he was going to be on the outside like that.
2 years, $13 million. Yeah, I mean that's not necessarily backup money.
No, it's definitely not. And with the 5 interceptions, I think they want that ball hawking ability to be out there. But yeah, I mean, Cam Hart made his way back into practice, and and this is the first time he's back in team drills after having that that labrum surgery. So he's back on the field, but he was with the second team out there with Benjamin St. Juste on the other side of him. So it seems like as of right now, he's going to have to earn that starting outside cornerback role and get it back. And he's going to have to prove that he's fully healthy, because we know that part of that is the there everyday mentality. So if he wants to be, that outside corner, he's going to have to show up every single day, be on the field, make plays, and go take that outside cornerback spot.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks to an extent, just because it feels like maybe he would have been able to solidify that case more if he didn't have the 2 concussions last year, if he didn't have to leave the playoff game. And it sucks that he had obviously a surgery on something. He's now had surgery on 4 times now on his shoulder. So
once was enough for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, especially just at a position where you're trying to catch the football to some certain degree, right? But maybe, the guy with 5 interceptions last year, we should have thought more highly of as far as just him having kind of the starting role to lose. I just think that maybe I thought the Chargers had a higher opinion of Cam Hart and just kind of expected him to be the starter, or at least it would be his to lose after a really impressive rookie season, where not only did you miss him in the games where he had the concussions, right, and just kind of could see the impact of him not being on the field, especially with certain matchups, right, and big, tall receivers, guys like that, and also in the running game, where he was their most physical corner, I think, pretty easily last season. And that was with, Christian Fulton having kind of a resurgent year as far as being able to tackle, and the obvious missed tackles that we saw from Tarheeb Still, a place where he could kind of level up. But I do think that Derwin James is still going to play safety, right? He's not only going to be in the slot, he's someone that's going to get moved around. And when he's back playing safety, it'll still likely be Cam Hart and Dante Jackson on the outside with Tarheeb Still in the slot. That's still the likely outcome when Derwin James is at safety. Now, what did we just talk about? He's playing closer to the line than he ever has. He's going to play a ton in the slot, which he won an all-pro nod at last season, which is kind of crazy. And I just think that it is just interesting to see at this point, Cam Hart, if he wants to be starting again, it looks like he's going to have to retake that position, which is not, I think, a conversation that we thought we were going to be having at this time of the year. And also, now that we know that, one of the top camp battles, I think, now that, going into training camp, and something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on, because we know that Cam Hart has all the potential in the world to be a starting outside corner, even as a 5th-round pick, which just makes it that much more impressive. But we still have a ton to get to on today's show because it's loaded. But first, it's going to be the 9 athletes, the 9 elite athletes, according to Jim Harbaugh. And of course, like we talked about, Zion Johnson makes it on the list. But who didn't make it? We're going to talk about that. JK Dobbins bolting for the Broncos, and also a random tryout for Willie Snead, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. And I couldn't have had a better time to get a Skylight Calendar now that I have a baby and I have way more things to keep track of than I had before. David also has a Skylight Calendar. We both love ours. My dad actually saw it at my house when he was visiting the baby a couple of weeks ago, and he was so surprised at how easy everything was, how easy it was to kind of sort through the chaos, and how scheduled we now are, which is not something we were known for. And I was able to get him one for Father's Day, and right now, you guys can get one too, because Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off of their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/NFL. David, we still have a bunch to get into because a bunch of news came out on Tuesday, including Jim Harbaugh telling us which of the Chargers players were elite players or at least trainers, as he ended up putting it. But I think when you see the list, you're like, okay, what are you just kind of going down the best players on the Chargers roster? Because for the most part, that is what it is. But thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen. We might be back with Fan Mail Friday, but we also might get more mandatory minicamp practices this week. So make sure you guys are here with us all week, because if we keep getting news, we'll keep putting out shows. We could even be back with you guys tomorrow. But if you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show with our guys Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, as they give you the most extensive breakdown of the entire NFL post-draft to make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. But the Elite Nine is not something I had heard of going into Jim Harbaugh's press conference on Tuesday, David. But when he was asked to clarify, Jim Harbaugh said first that Rashawn Slater was one of the 9 players that they had who trained at an elite level. So you're like, okay, well, who are the rest of the guys? And when asked about it, he said it's Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, and then also Derwin James, Tuli Tuipulotu, cool that he makes the list, and Khalil Mack, which is the least surprising thing in the world. But this was pretty interesting, David. I didn't know this was a thing, but I think it kind of makes sense that these are the guys that made the list, even if Zion Johnson is a surprise. No surprise that he's kind of a freak in the weight room.
Yeah, I've heard of the Hateful Eight, but I have not heard of the Elite Nine until today from Coach Harbaugh. But we all know and love Coach Harbaugh, and he's always going to say some crazy eccentric stuff. But yeah, I mean, you look at these guys, these are, by and large, the best players on the football team, and probably no coincidence that they are the workout demons, the guys that are out there training their butts off, trying to make sure that they're in the best physical condition of all time. And even when we're talking about Zion Johnson, it's never been a problem or an issue with the physical side of what he brings to the table. The dude looks like a mountain. He looks like he's chiseled out of granite. He is an absolute freak of nature, and I'm sure he can throw some absolutely crazy weight around in the gym. I have absolutely no doubt about that. But, when you look at all of the resumes of all of these other players, and then you look at Zion Johnson, it just seems like he's the one in that group that kind of seems like the ugly duckling.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's, at least as far as the on-field product goes,
Correct.
right? Like, it no surprise to see him here. Like you said, it's not been the physical side of things that has kept him from being great. We know he has all the physical abilities. It's just kind of the brain farts, the quick losses, the times where he just feels lost and doesn't see a stunt or a blitz coming and those kind of things, which maybe, doing all this practice at center will help with some of those things. But it does mean something. I mean, this is what Derwin James had to say about it. To be one of those 9 players, I don't take that for granted, James later added. I just try to show up every day, set the example, set the standard for the younger guys. And Jim Harbaugh also said, hey, players can get added to this list any day, right? This is what these players should be striving for. That quote was from Daniel Popper. But it is kind of cool that you have these guys setting the example and giving these other players kind of a sight to set, their eyes on, or just as far as what they can get to, the next level, leveling up as an NFL player, and how you get your body to an NFL level, or at least what the elite players are getting their body to. So no surprise that most of those players on the list. But another piece of news we got on Tuesday officially was that JK Dobbins is signing a deal with the Denver Broncos. We knew he was visiting there This is from Jordan Schultz. The JK Dobbins deal with the Broncos is for 1 year, $2.75 million in base value. He has $2.5 million available in reachable incentives, making the max value $5.25 million. The Chargers put an unrestricted free agent tender on him, so he basically had to get signed by another team if he wanted to play this season. So I'm happy that he did get that signing, David. It just sucks to see the Broncos making probably another, nice move. I hate that he ended up in Denver.
Yeah, I was like, anywhere but the AFC West. Like, please, come on. But the writing was on the wall when he took the dinner with the owners and the coaches, getting wined and dined and, trying to, they're trying to, make sure that they add him to, and it's a logical fit. It makes a lot of sense. They drafted a rookie running back that was factoring to probably be their starter. They could have used a veteran. J.K. Dobbins seems like the most logical fit. He was very productive when he was on the field with the Chargers, and I honestly do wish him all the best because he is a great dude. Like, he has an infectious energy. He is, a guy that's went through just an unbelievable amount of adversity in his short NFL career so far. So I really wish that he performs very, very well this season. Except when he's playing the Chargers, where I hope he fumbles 5 times and does nothing. Right. That's obviously goes without saying.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he can, play a full 17-game season. I know for him that would just be something that maybe gets him something more commensurate to kind of the player he was last year, over 1,000 total yards from scrimmage. So he was a really good player. But let's be honest, the Chargers believe they upgraded at that position. End of story. So, the Broncos have made a ton of moves. We'll see if they pan out. I mean, obviously, I still think J.K. Dobbins is a very, very good player, but the Chargers definitely went a different direction for a reason. And as far as what this means with them getting a comp pick, this is from Alex Katzen, who does a lot of great stuff on Twitter, a good follow on there, at least as far as the salary cap and stuff goes. Someone more qualified to talk about it than me. He said, to clarify the comp pick situation here, since Dobbins got the unrestricted free agent tender from the Chargers, Dobbins has now signed before the July 22nd deadline. LA is eligible to receive a comp pick for him now. They probably still won't because they signed more free agents than they lost. So it's all about players that you signed or you let go that qualify as compensatory free agents. So even though bigger deals were made by the guys the Chargers let go, like Poona Ford and Christian Fulton, Josh Palmer, guys like that, the Chargers just have a lot of those kind of $3 million-ish players after, the Mekhi Bectons of the world, and, that will probably end up offsetting it. Now, those are all projections. The Chargers put that tender on him for a reason. So, doesn't mean they absolutely won't, but they only have 6 picks next year because I believe the Elijah Molden trade. So, it would be nice to get one back, even if it's a 7th rounder. But there's one more kind of random, note that we have from today, which is that the Chargers held a veteran tryout for wide receiver Willie Snead at a position, David, where they're already loaded. I mean, they're so deep at wide receiver. You can talk about the top end talent, but there's a ton of guys in that room, a ton of guys we know they like. This was surprising.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 10 guys. There's 10 guys that are vying for maybe 6 spots. So this was a big surprise. But I mean, hey, the moniker we all know is competitors welcome. And they're going to give him a chance, give him an opportunity. But the thing with Willie Snead is, he hasn't done anything in like 5 years. I mean, you look at the stats, like he hasn't had more than 50 yards receiving since 2020. It's been a very, very long time since he's done anything of note in the NFL. And really, it was the first 2 years of his NFL career where he had over 895 receiving yards, had a couple of really good seasons with the New Orleans Saints, had a decent year a little bit later on in 2018 with the Baltimore Ravens. But after that, it was very, very minimal production for Willie Snead, bouncing around to a couple of different teams. So at 32 years old, I don't know really understand the reasoning behind this type of tryout, but hey, we'll see.
We'll see. And I think at, a certain point last year, Tony Jefferson was kind of in this same boat as a player trying to get back into things. Obviously, he took a year off willingly and was a scout for the Ravens, and the relationship was different there. But this is a guy that spent 3 seasons with not just Joe Ortiz in Baltimore, but also Greg Roman. And he had, 45 games there, 126 receptions, 1,422 yards and 9 touchdowns. So a good role player for that Baltimore Ravens offense when he played there. Now, like you said, I mean, he hasn't had 4 catches in a year since 2020, so it's been a long time. But that's kind of what it feels like to me, maybe doing a solid for one of his former players and also turning over every stone. We've always talked about that, right? literally leaving no stone unturned as far as ways to get Justin Herbert more weapons or to add more talent. And I think with this signing specifically, or, this tryout specifically, it's really about loading up the practice squad. Like, I think they just want like a couple of really good options at receiver on the practice squad if they're going to go there. So that becomes kind of the next competition. Isn't just if you can make the roster, but can you find a place on this practice squad, which at receiver feels really, really hard for a team right now that, has 6 guys that feel like they're locks from the for the roster, unless you're going to move on from Darius Davis or Quentin Johnston or one of the 2 draft picks you have this year. I mean, the top 6 are Mike Williams, Lad McConkey, Quentin, Darius Davis, both the rookies from this year. And we know they have an unhealthy infatuation with Jalen Reagor, who seems very clearly the 7th guy. Undoubtedly, they're going to keep 6 wide receivers without question. Now, the 7th spot, right, with Brendan Rice and Jalen Reagor, and now you're adding Willie Snead into it, and Luke Grimm, who we know, they already liked and did a lot of homework from out of Kansas. So, Jalen Johnson, who might have been the most impressive wide receiver undrafted free agent last year. So many guys. But hey, at least between, Trey Lance and Taylor Heineke, maybe they at least have guys that can give them, the best chance to put their best foot forward. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The schedule this week is a little bit fluid. If we're getting more practice notes tomorrow from The Athletic and Daniel Popper and Eric Smith, and we're getting actual open practices, we might be back with you guys for a show tomorrow. If not, it'll be back on Friday, and probably a Fan Mail Friday, where you can hit us up all the places you can find the show every day, at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, to make sure you never miss the show, especially if we get news tomorrow. The best way is to subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcasts from. Man, I feel football coming. It's great to actually see these guys back on the field, and I can't wait for the next one as we keep you up with the latest Chargers news as always. But we could be back with you guys tomorrow at the latest Friday. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.